Hello, hello, possums. Yes, it is I, the conspicuous moo. And today I just want to give basically a cheat sheet for how to tank defensively as a Brewmaster. A lot of my stuff recently has been like, let's go with the Child Passions Legendary, get as much damage out as possible, and just destroy all of our enemies. And while that's fine, someone did very correctly point out in my last video that there wasn't really a lot of emphasis on how to be tankier as a Brewmaster. So I'm going to fix that today. So let's, yes, let's get cracking. Let's start off with talents. Now this is the Mythic plus ones. The first two rows, whether for Mythic plus or for raids, are pretty much whatever you're feeling like. I choose Chi Burst for Mythic plus because when you're getting down to those last 1-2% of a boss, this might be able to get you over the line. It does a little bit of healing, it does a little bit of damage, it does have the potential to pull additional nonsense, but for the most part, you should be helping your team along, and helping your healer out as well, who's probably suffering greatly at the back there. That's why I take Chi Burst. If you want to go selfish and go Eye of the Tiger, just, it's much for muchness, it'll only be healing towards you. So, and damage as well. So you have to keep it up every 8 seconds. Hitting Tiger Pile will not be a problem in that respect. For the level 25s, Tiger's Lust, I strongly recommend Tiger's Lust for Mythic Plus because there are certain mechanics that snare you in the ground, and then you have an affix like Volcanic, and you just get blown up because you can't move. Now if you're a gnome, this isn't a problem, you can probably get out of it, but if you're not a gnome, and what are you doing? Tiger's Lust is probably the best idea. You can also break other people out of snares as well with Tiger's Lust. Light Brewing stays the same, Mythic Plus or Raid. Light Brewing is still probably the best. I mean, you can go Black Ox Brew if you really want to min-max, but you're really going to have to be superbly good at Brewmaster in order to get the maximum usage out of it, which is why most people just plump for the much simpler Light Brewing. Ring of Peace is exactly the same as well. In fact, the rest of these talent lines are exactly the same. While Summon Black Ox Statue can potentially be very useful in Mythic Plus, the vast amount of utility that you get out of Ring of Peace just makes it absolutely ideal. Also, of course, in certain situations, especially in High Mythic Plus, you're going to have to kite, and that's where Ring of Peace is going to be one of your strongest weapons. 40, look, you've got a toss-up here between Healing Elixir and Dampen Harm. Bob and Weave generally isn't taken anymore because we purify so much these days that we don't really reach stagger levels which make it all that valuable. So you're going to have to work this one out for yourself. I'm currently at Mythic 5 and below I'm going Healing Elixir because I'm just helping out my healer and that's fine. Above Mythic 5 I'm going Dampen Harm, just because by that stage I'm starting to feel a little too spiky, and I'm going to focus far more on my damage reduction and not on my, relatively mediocre self-healing. 45, Rushing Jade Wind. The thing about Exploding Keg, even though it's lovely, is it's just snap damage. 1 minute, boom, that's it. It's a fabulous ability, it's very fun, but Rushing Jade Wind is that consistent threat. It's something that costs nothing. You have to press it once every 8 seconds and it is consistent damage. Now in a Mythic Plus situation that is very, very useful for picking up initial mobs and keeping the hate on you. So that's why Rushing Jade Wind is generally preferred. If you're going into an absolutely crazily high key, then perhaps you'd want to do Special Delivery because of the kiting potential it has. The randomosity of the barrels shooting up and crashing down though does provide a drawback because it's not necessarily going to hit where you want it to hit. And finally, High Tolerance. There's no competition in the bottom row when it comes to thinking defensively as a Brewmaster. While Celestial Flames has that additional 5% damage reduction, having a base 5% additional stagger effectiveness, plus the haste which will speed up your Purifying Brews and your Celestial Brews, everything else, and your Keg Smashes, just make that, that's the only option that you really have. Now for raids, it does get a little different. You are really recommended to use Eye of the Tiger in this case. It's one less button that you'll have to worry about, and Chi Burst, you probably have a multitude of healers who should be healing you and everybody else. So this will just be your own personal source of healing. It's not very big, but whatever. I've gone with Chi Torpedo on this one simply because I personally prefer it in raids to get out of trouble quickly. When it's combined with tumbling technique, the conduit, it does give you the ability every time you blackout kick, you get an additional charge of roll. It does give you that zippiness to get out of things, and in raids they do tend to be, you know, more large. I'm thinking Hungering Destroyer when the cuts consume and you need to get out as soon as possible, stuff like that. So that's why I personally prefer Chi Torpedo, just to shoot straight out of there. I've not really encountered too many mechanics in the raiders yet that requires Tiger's Lust to help people out. Light Brewing, as usual, no worries. Ring of Peace, as usual, once again. Slightly more niche in this respect, but you know, if you have a lot of annoying trash that's overwhelming you, then you can use Ring of Peace to get things out. It doesn't look like it's been used all that offensively at the moment in Castle Nathria. Dampen Harm, yeah, once again, this is the healer's thing where you've got like 4 or 5 of them in the back and they should be keeping you alive. And you're going to help them by having this cooldown available every 2 minutes. And you know, it does scale with the amount of damage that you're taking and does both types, so physical and magic. So you know, it is very useful cooldown to have. It's arguably the most useful of our 3 major cooldowns. So that's why I wouldn't really go with the other 2 on level 40. Rushing Jadewind again, this is just basically because it's the most damage. You know, there aren't a lot of defensive options there. Exploding Keg will possibly reduce the damage done to you by 99%, because that's what it's supposed to do, but that won't necessarily work on raid bosses. So yes, Rushing Jadewind, if this thing dies faster, then you know, you won't require as much healing. Plus, you know, it's just additional damage, it's additional threat, so always good. And High Tolerance once again. Yeah, there's no real contest there. In terms of conduit priorities, Walk with the Ox is still the one to go with. It did get a change recently because it was doing a little bit too much damage with Stomp. I think the percentage of the stagger that you were clearing was incorrect. It was meant to be 25%, it was substantially higher. Even though that has been changed, it's still the best potency conduit that we have currently. Also, it will reduce the cooldown of Invoke Nizal the Black Ox by around about 30 seconds, as long as you're just keeping your shuffle up, which is Keg Smash and Blackout Kick, so it should be absolutely fine. Your second potency will be your Covenant Conduit, so Way of the Fae, Imbued Reflections, that sort of thing. Endurance-wise, very limited. Harm Denial is probably still our best option there. As for a second Endurance, don't. I mean, they're all so bad. Some people will, you know, sort of go with Celestial Effervescence, but it's only really healing that you do on yourself while you're using Celestial Brew, which, you know, it's, if it was actually no increased healing received from all sources for 5 seconds or something, it would be more effective. But as it is, Celestial Effervescence is not terribly good. I suppose Fortifying Ingredients, that's the, you know, absolute outer. You know, it will give you a small shield every time you use Fortifying Brew. It's not a very big shield. It's pretty ordinary, but you know, there really is nothing else on offer. Finesse-wise, this is going to be, you know, are you doing Mythic Plus or are you doing raids? For Mythic Plus, Dizzying Tumble is an obvious choice because it will reduce the damage that mobs will do to you after you leg sweep them, and yes, that is after the stun has expired. But stuns generally don't work in raids, so you would go to Tumbling Technique, which will give you the chance to have an additional roll every time you Blackout Kick. So, you know, you probably go with Tumbling Technique in a raid environment because you're actually going to get something out of it that way. Soulbinds for each of the covenants. Kirin, Pelagos, still Pelagos. So Combat Meditation, Walk with the Ox, Focusing Mantra, Harm Denial, and Bond of Friendship. I'm not actually going into any of the third Soulbinds because they're not available yet. They won't be available for a couple more weeks. And for the most part, I think it's only Venthyr that would actually go with that one as their tanking soulbind, which is General Draven. So, those of you who chose Venthyr, you will very, very much appreciate the day that General Draven arrives, because he's the best tank soulbind option for you. Necrolord, Emily, Lead by Example is outstanding. So, you know, that's a very, very good ability. Then you have Walk with the Ox, Emily's Magnificent Skin, additional 5% health. I mean, you know, we're not the healthiest of tanks, so that's because of our effective health and the way that Stagger works, but anyway, you know, 5% doesn't hurt. Dizzying Tumble, or, of course, you know, you would take Tumbling Technique if you were more raid orientated. For the Night Fae, it's near, and it's near by quite some distance. Don't do Dreamweaver, it's a trap. So, Grove Invigoration, lots of nice mastery, Walk with the Ox again, Run Without Tiring, which will, you know, regenerate your health, sorry, your energy, your health while you're in Soul Shape form. Dizzying Tumble or Tumbling Technique, depending upon, you know, which content you're doing, and then Swift Patrol, which I've only just gotten. It's really good. It's really good fun. For those of you who did choose Venthyr, you have two very poor choices, unfortunately, at the moment. I guess I would go with Theatar. So Soothing Shade, as long as you're not moving around too much. This is also a Night Fae ability problem, but you know, if you can get under the shade, then you get lots of mastery. If you have to move at all, then it kind of diminishes in terms of value. Dizzying Tumble or Tumbling Technique, depending on which content you're doing, Leisurely Gait and Walk with the Ox. And that's us up to Renown 12, which is where we're pretty much are now. Right, the ultimate cheat sheet. Okay, this is for, you know, defensive brew mastery only, so stat priority, eye level. Eye level trumps everything, still, just because of the agility is a very, very strong stat for us. It is, the primary stat is stronger than the secondaries are, and so, you know, the more agility you have, the more stagger you have. General. Versatility, mastery, and critical strike all have around about the same value, so, you know, as long as you're picking up gear that has a combination of those three, in any which way or form, then you're doing fine. You're gearing correctly for Brewmaster. It's very simple to... And then, you know, haste is left over. Now, you know, it's not the end of the world if you get a haste. If you get a high eye level, you know, like a 207 with haste on it, put it on. But, you know, it's not something you should be aiming for anyway. Gemming-wise, versatility. You know, it covers both bases. If you're doing a little bit of wind walking on the side, versatility is also the best stat for them. So that's definitely worth thinking about. Weapons. Been lucky enough to pick up weapons. Oh, I'm so envious. I'm really suffering for weapons right now. Lightless Force for two-handers. And for if you are a dual wielder, then Lightless Force on your one-hander, and Celestial Guidance on your offhand. And that gives you a chance to have 5% agility proc every once in a while. It's not great. It's not terrible. Enchant-wise, Cloak, Fortified Speed, more speed. Can't go wrong. We're monks. We love it. Chest, Eternal Stats, which is 30 stats. Boots, Eternal Agility, which is an additional 15 agility. And Rings, Tenets of Versatility. Once again, versatility is not an exciting stat, but it's an effective one. I will point out at this point that some of those enchants are really, really expensive. I've held off, really. I've got a whole bunch of enchants that I haven't used yet because I haven't really got anything at an item level, whereas I'm going to keep that for a while. It's going to be fine. So, you know, you may not want to blow 4k on your 171 chest, and that's absolutely understandable. My threshold at the moment is 200 and up. For legendaries, Stormstout's Last Keg is going to be your... It's already the better option in Mythic Plus, and it's slightly more defensive potential in raids. Because you're not really looking at damage this time, you're looking at, you know, being as defensive as possible. Stormstouts is the best bet. If you have Charred Passions and you don't have Stormstout, it's not the end of the world. These are two excellent, excellent legendaries. They're the only ones that really count at the moment. I've gotten both, so I can play around with them. But, you know, Charred Passions has no defensive value whatsoever. You know, even if you are using Spinning Crane Kick for some reason, the additional shuffle second doesn't count, it doesn't matter. So, yeah. Trinkets. Oh, goodness, I haven't got either of these trinkets yet, so if you do get them, give them to me. Blood Spattered Scale from Hakar in the other side is very good. It's an on-use trinket, and it basically gives you a blood shield, and it does a little bit of damage as well. So, fabulous. Fabulous trinket. If you can get it, get hold of it as soon as possible. Violet Putrefaction is from Dr. Ickes and Plaguefall. Now, those of you who are brave enough to go into Plaguefall, it's just this is just like an on-use. It's more of a DPS-y trinket. It's very, very good on just like single targets as well. So, you know, if you're going into raids, this is a particularly good one because it will do additional damage. In Castle Nathria, the ultimate trinket that you will be wanting is Sanguine Vintage from Side of Nathras, which is it's kind of like an upgrade for the Blood Spattered Scale, really. It's a big shield. It gives you a heal afterwards. It's rather nice. The Stone Legion Heraldry from obviously the Stone Legion Generals is the other one. It will give you a flat 85-ish% versatility, and then it will increase that versatility by 5% depending on how many other people have also got the trinket equipped. So you know, it is a flat damage increase, healing increase, and damage reduction. And the more people, the better. So, you know, it's not a very exciting trinket, but it is, once again, like versatility, dull but effective. Finally, let's do rotation and tips. So, rotation priority is your Covenant ability to start off with, then Keg Smash, Blackout Kick, Breath of Fire, Rushing Jade Wind, and Chi Burst if you have talented it. Use Tiger Palm as filler for additional brew reduction if you have some spaces. Don't bother using Spinning Crane Kick. It has no defensive benefit whatsoever. You know, if you wanted to do additional AoE damage, you're not really looking to do that in this kind of build anyway. And you have a lot of AoE abilities that are quite potent and, you know, will add up to a pretty good overall threat generation. So you don't really need to use Spinning Crane Kick in a build like this. Use Invoke Nizal on the pull, and then as often as possible afterwards. If you've got the Walk with the Ox Conduit, you know, that will be every 2.5 minutes or so. Touch of Death as often as possible, not just because of the hilarity, but because, you know, it is, first of all, a substantial DPS increase, and second of all, 200% of the damage you do is cleared off your stagger, so it also has a defensive use. Previously, I'd said that I was running around and I'm kind of leaving one brew left over just in case something happens. Now that I'm going into more difficult content and I'm starting to get hit rather hard, I have changed my mind on this. And so please, please, please do not sit on your brews. You know, use your Purifying and Celestial brews as often as they are up. You know, they are your main defensive abilities. It's kind of like, you know, having 2 charges of shield block but only using 1. The only exception I would to have to this is if this is, you know, particularly if you know the encounters well enough, you know that there's going to be a massive physical or a massive magical hit coming in any second now, and you're going to need to purify that off as soon as possible to take it off your stagger. Then maybe you can hold off on it, but otherwise you should really be using these all on cooldown. Now, call me Johnny Obvious, but you know, I just wanted to cover this as well. Do remember to use everything that you have at your disposal, particularly in Mythic Plus, where, you know, things start to get a little bit leery. So, you know, paralysis, you can take entire mobs out of the fight for a solid minute. Leg sweep, Ring of Peace, Spear Hand Strike for interrupts. Covenant signature abilities, so you know, Door of Shadows, Soul Shape, stuff like that, you can absolutely use those, and you have a lot of ways to move around as well. So you've got your roll or your Chi Torpedo, depending on what you've picked there, Tiger's Lust if you've talented it, and of course Transcendence as well. And finally, and most importantly, when you're getting into this hard-hitting content, it is, you know, you want to save up your cooldowns for that special moment. Don't. You'll know when to use the cooldowns. If it feels right, then do it. You don't really want to, because, you know, if you don't use it, like for the entirety of the fight, you've just annoyed your healer for no particular reason. Because, you know, they might well ask at the end, you know, you didn't use Zen, you didn't use Fortifying Brew, you didn't use Dampen Harm, and you took a ton of damage. What are you doing, broski? I think that's what the cool people say. And kite. Everyone at the moment is getting smashed in the face rather hard. It is not a currently viable strategy for a lot of tanks who are, you know, a lot of tanks who are designed with a lot of cooldowns to stand there and take it can probably do that. But, you know, even some of them are getting a little bit of distance away and giving the healer a chance to recover. So, you know, kiting, we got the tools. They have been given to us for a reason, and at the moment a lot of people are finding, you know, they're going up to like 10s, and they can't just stand there and stagger it anymore. They're going to have to put some distance between them. Don't be afraid to kite, and don't listen to anyone who goes, "Oh, why are you kiting?" Ultimately, at the end of the day, you don't have to be terrible to them. You can just say, well, I can either kite this, or we'll all die. So which one's it going to be? And so yes, that's it. That's my little snapshot of how to do Brewmaster more defensively. I'm getting into Mythic Pluses now, so I'm starting to get slapped around quite a lot. So, you know, I'm learning a lot about especially kiting techniques and particular mobs. It's all part of the learning experience, especially in the start of an expansion. So yeah, I mean, I hope you enjoy that. I hope that was helpful. You know, there are, of course, the usual guides. You've got the Peaks of Serenity, you've got Wowhead, what's the other one? Oh yeah, Icy Veins. All three of them have guides written by really, really good brewmasters on how to do all of this stuff. This is just more of a, you know, if you want a turtle, if you want to be as tanky as possible, this is the way that I would go. So you don't have to follow it, I'm just putting it out there. Now, I know I did say I was going to include the simming on the video, but this one has already been long enough, I think, so I'll probably make that sometime over the weekend, just for people who are wondering about, you know, should you sim, when you should sim, what you should be simming for, and is sim a good sandwich filling? Anyway, I think I've got some Mythic Plus to do tonight. Don't forget to do your Mythic Pluses this week, because it's got that Heroic Nathra reward. You can do 4 Mythic Noughts and get it done. You know, I will pray for you. I'll pray for all of you to get a Sanguine Vintage 213 trinket. So, you know, you'll be safe, basically, until the next raid. And until then, until the simming begins, I shall sign off, and I am the Conspicuous Moo. And a very good weekend to you.